Good morning, everyone. Going live today to answer a question that I get a lot from clients, from potential clients, just from people that I talk to about their kids and about the college search process. And the question is this: do the SATs still matter? They see that so many schools are going test optional. And they're like, does that mean you don't need the SATs? Does that mean the SATs aren't as important? And I want to clear up a lot of the confusion and a lot of the misinformation that's going on around about the SATs and about what test optional actually means. So the idea here is pretty simple. Test optional does not mean test blind. Test optional does not mean that tests don't count or that schools don't look at tests. In fact, when you look at a college and it wants to say to you that the SATs don't matter, those colleges can go test blind. And the University of California schools are going to be going test blind. And that's a huge and a wonderful development, but very few schools have followed suit. Because test blind means we will not look at SATs. We will not consider them. They don't matter. We know they're BS. And I wish it was true that more colleges were doing that. Yes, it would mean I had less SAT business, but I would still help students in other ways. But it's not about me. It's about the fact that the SATs are a ridiculous, archaic test that doesn't measure anything of value. It measures how well you take the SAT. Fortunately, that's a coachable, beatable skill, but that's a topic for a different day. So what does test optional actually mean? Test optional means you can apply without SAT scores. But what that doesn't tell you is what applying without SAT scores will actually do to your chances of getting in. And that is widely varied depending on the college you're applying to. Because here's the deal. Some colleges are buyers, some colleges are sellers. Some colleges are accepting 80% plus of the people that apply, and other colleges have acceptance rates under 50% or even under 10%. So what that looks like has a huge difference on what test optional means for you. Now, can you get into schools without SAT scores? Absolutely. But the harder that school is to get into, the more everything else has to be absolutely off the charts for you to get in. And in fact, at most of those schools, even with everything off the charts, if it's even a moderately selective school, you're still hurting your chances by not submitting strong SAT scores. Think about it from the college's perspective. Think about why these colleges have gone test optional. It may not be what you think. If you're a college, you are a for-profit institution for the most part. And even if you're a nonprofit, you still have to meet payroll, you still have to meet certain financial obligations. So colleges are very concerned about generating revenue. So if you're a college, you need to get more money. How do you get more money? Well, you can raise your prices, but unless people think you're a great school, unless you're incredibly attractive, there's a limit as to how high those prices can go. And one of the things that determines how attractive a college is and how much they can raise their prices is how selective they are. The more selective they are, the more people want to go there. Everyone wants to go to a club that's hard to get into. So if you're a college, you say, okay, let's be more selective. How do we do that? Selectivity is a simple fraction. It's the number of people they accept over the number of people that apply. But they can't cut the number of people they accept because then they lose money. So it all becomes about how do we get more people to apply. So they ask themselves, why do people not apply? Because they got shitty SAT scores. Okay, let's go test optional. The folks whose SAT scores suck will just not submit them and will reject most of them anyway. The folks with great SAT scores will still submit them. This does a double benefit for the colleges. Number one, it increases applications, which increases their selectivity, which lets them charge more, which makes them more attractive, et cetera, et cetera. But also, having the people that don't have good scores not submit those scores artificially raises their average SAT scores, which also makes them look like better schools. So for the college, it's a win-win. It doesn't necessarily help the student who thinks that SATs don't matter as much as they do, and often gets disappointed by being rejected if they apply without scores. So what does this mean for you? Or what does this mean for your teens? It means that the SATs, unfortunately, still do matter a lot for getting in and for scholarships at most schools. It also means that the rest of the application matters a lot too. And the specific strategy for when and where to use the SATs and how high you need to get depends on the schools you're applying to, depends on how selective they are, and depends on what the other aspects of your application look like. because there are different views, even in a particular college's admissions office, on how much the SAT should matter. And that's a battle that takes place on a day-to-day basis inside those admissions offices. What often ends up being the case is that the students without SAT scores that get in are the ones that add something else they're looking for in their freshman class. Whether that's geographic diversity, whether that's first-generation students, whether that's folks that have something, they play the piccolo, they're a football player. They bring something to the table that they need in that freshman class. And it's impossible to know what those things are going in. So my advice for most of my students is to work hard to get good at the SATs and to have them be a plus factor in your application. Thanks so much for listening. Have an amazing day.